The name of my company is VetCor, right? And what I try and coach my franchisees. There's a subtle difference, right? And it's important. I don't ask or expect people to use us because we're a primarily veteran-owned, veteran-operated company. If I did, that would be asking for a handout. I don't want handouts. But here's the subtle difference. Because we're primarily veteran-owned and veteran-operated, our technicians show up fit, polite, on time, treat people with dignity and respect. So when's the last time you had a service provider of any kind come to your home? And when did they tell you they were going to be there? 8 to 12, and then they don't show up on time, right? Now, this brand stands for timely, quality, reliable service and the value of veterans. So if I were to tell you, Mary Lou, that veterans on time is late and early is on time, that resonates with you, right? To choose our brand because you want people to show up early because early is on time and on time is late, right? And that's what you want with a service provider. And most of our offices and our projects are run by former veterans, non-commissioned officers in the U.S. military. And I don't know any U.S. military former non-commissioned officer of any service that can't get a group of guys and a group of gals to be at the right place at the right time with the right kit and accomplish the mission.
This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, Mary Lou Kaiser.
Hello, Team PYP. Mary Lou Kaiser here. Welcome to another episode of the Play Your Position podcast, where we talk all things leadership and showing up your best, learning how to run the plays, make a difference, and have an impact on the people you care most about. Today is no exception. I've got a great guest who is ready to take the field. His name is Paul Huszar. Paul, are you ready for kickoff?
Oh, I am absolutely ready. Thanks for having me, Mary Lou.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. So, team, here's what I know about Paul Huszar. First of all, he is the CEO of VetCor and Team VetCor and a retired Army officer. Paul graduated from West Point and then served 23 years on active duty, including 4 combat tours in Iraq. He commanded a 1,000-soldier and Airman Joint Task Force in 2009 and 2010, and last served as the Dean of the Army's Engineer School. He retired and moved to Tampa in 2013 when he started VetCor and started franchising the concept in 2019. His passion is creating sustainable and meaningful employment opportunities and now business ownership opportunities for American veterans. So, Paul, once again, it is so great to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mary Lou. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so right out of the gate, I want you to tell us all about when you got your call to leadership. Do you remember a specific time? Was there a lot of confetti and champagne popping, or was it more subtle where you just had this feeling like, this is what I need to do?
If I were to trace back the original call, it would be way back, probably through team sports, which is one of the reasons why I love your podcast and the analogy you make, is a young, probably teenager. And then through that, I did well in school and I got recruited to go to West Point. And what I like to tell people is our military is the greatest in the world because it's a leadership laboratory. So through 4 years at West Point and then 23 years on active duty, I had a ton of opportunities and calls for leadership. But what I'll say is my call to leadership now is really when I transitioned from active duty military leadership to civilian opportunities and to create a position of leadership as a veteran in the business community. And that was really when I'll say probably 6 or 8 months after I retired and struggled with finding an opportunity found me, and that was my current call to leadership, to become the president of VetCor and then franchise it and create opportunities for more vets.
Yeah. So talk more about the challenges that you face and a lot of vets face during that transition.
Yeah. So, I have a fairly decent resume, I think. I have a master's in civil engineering. I'm a licensed professional engineer. You covered some of the other things of a pretty noteworthy military career, and yet I struggled finding opportunities. And now I kind of look back and laugh upon it. I felt like, when I retired and moved here, it said, don't you people, meaning you civilians, don't you know me? and the answer was no, and nor do they care, nor do they have to, right? And so I struggled to understand that, but then I researched it, and because I said, gosh, if I'm having these challenges as a retiring lieutenant colonel who commanded a battalion and has these credentials, what about the young men and women who maybe served 4 or 5 years in initial tours as an enlistee, got out as a sergeant, but had so much more responsibility compared to their peers? What are they doing? They're probably having greater struggles, and they are. And so I said, okay, why is this? And I really stopped the struggle to find that reason why. And I assessed it, and I think I found a lot of those reasons, overcame those challenges myself personally, and now I've gotten to a position where I have the microphone. Literally, I have a microphone with you, with others. I talk to chambers, I talk to industry associations, and explain kind of the value of veterans and why they have those challenges, but why they also make great teammates.
Mm-hmm. So why do vets make great employees, great teammates? What is it about their training or the mindset that people who choose to go into the armed services, obviously they get refined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people commonly think and advocate for, duty, responsibility, teamwork. And I agree with all of those things 100% to the point where, I built a company. I've risked my life's fortune on that kind of concept. I'm not sure that necessarily resonates when it comes to practical purposes for business people selecting them on their team. So what I kind of coach them and teach them on is they come with lifelong lessons. They come with recipes for success. So in the military, there's this thing called an after-action review, AAR, always assessing what happened, why it happened, how you can improve. Imagine you have a culture like that in your business community where everyone on your team is always looking at and assessing and reassessing and learning and getting better and improving, right? Veterans understand that there are 5 components to a mission statement: who, what, where, when, and why. So when business leaders complain about millennials, you always got to explain the why to them. Well, veterans have been used to receiving and explaining the why, because then when they give mission type orders, they give task and purpose. They understand commander's intent 2 levels above. What is the purpose behind doing something? What are the key tasks and what are the end state? What should it look like if we achieve what is right? And so they come with all these recipes for success. They're lifelong learners. They're used to adapting technology, all of these things that we look for in a business beyond just the probably most important things, but I think often get overlooked. They're great teammates, great duty, responsibility, et cetera.
So you have VetCor now. You're looking to expand and give opportunity to vets around the country. What has been surprising to you about running a company and then expanding it via the franchising model?
Yeah, so one, it's a different world, and I tell folks, and veterans have a challenge getting used to that, but you've got to adapt to that. You have to understand, but a lot of the things that we do in the military help us understand and adapt to that. We have what's called intelligence preparation of the battlefield to try and figure out, the conditions of the battlefield in which we have to operate. So I look at things like that. We've succeeded kind of wildly in disaster response. In its essence, VetCor is a restoration company. We do water damage, fire damage, mold remediation, things like that. And people think about that as kind of disasters. This typical stuff we do today is dishwashers, ice makers, hot water heaters, air conditioning, and it's that boring stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But what's really allowed us to succeed, and when I talk to insurance executives about the franchise business model, is I say, hey, what you really want to know, though, is are we going to be there when it counts when you have a major disaster? You're in the risk management industry. And that's, can little old VetCor respond to a disaster? And so I say, let me rephrase that a different way. And this is one of the lessons I've learned, is taking my military experience and converting it to civilian equivalent. So I say to those insurance executives, I say, I think what you're asking is what will be our ability to deploy to a remote location under austere conditions, establish operations, and command and control those operations. Is that what you're asking us? Can we do that? And then they smile and they got to get a laugh from that.
And then they get out their checkbook. Here you go.
Yeah. And I said, as we've studied franchising and went to this business model, right? We've changed from just being a restoration company that had 3 offices in South Florida to now a franchising company. And when I learned about franchising, I spent about 2 years with the IFA, the International Franchise Association, obtaining my certified franchise executive, learning about the industry. What I learned was franchising is all about training, standardizing, and replicating.
Mm-hmm.
You know any institutions that have a good reputation with training, standardizing, and replicating?
Wow. Yeah, that is amazing parallels.
So what I try to kind of teach and coach veterans, and particularly our franchisees, is how to take things like that and use our relevant, very rich experiences and kind of take that square peg and put it in the round hole of the civilian world, but reshaping it, right? Mm-hmm. So that people understand how all those experiences and the great training and all that stuff is actually relevant in this new world of ours.
Okay. So can you describe one of the most challenging restoration situations you found yourself in? I'm sure you faced some pretty gnarly situations.
Well, the cool thing is each one is different. I'll tell you, I'll explain kind of the macro. The first hurricane that we responded to was really, we're based in Tampa. It hit the northeast coast near Jacksonville, Florida. One of our insurance carriers, one of our great clients, asked us to deploy up there. And so we took 11 guys in 3 trucks and stayed up there for about 2 weeks. We deployed into a KOA, campground cabins. We had 3 cabins. We just, hot cotted, put the bunks up there, and we all stayed up there and worked sun up to sundown, doing temporary roof tarps, water damage, flooding, all this kind of stuff, and just worked our butt up from sun up to sundown. So those were challenging conditions, but it was like and all of us that went we're veterans, and most of us are veterans, not exclusively, but most are. And so those conditions were challenging in and of itself. But what I'll tell you where the real challenge hit me was after we were done, the harsh lesson that I learned as a business leader was, look, we had to go up there because when a catastrophe like that hits, there's never enough density of contractors in an area to do all the work. So they have to have external resources like us come in and help, right?
Yeah.
Well, the same thing is true. Insurance companies processing claims can't process those claims fast enough because they don't staff to that level of administration, right? Because they can't afford to.
They can't, right.
Right? So guess what slows down? The payments.
Payments, of course.
Right? So, as a dumb knuckle dragon former Army officer, hey, we delight the customer, we delight the client, we take care of the mission, no problem. But I didn't necessarily understand the implications of cash flow with respect to my business.
Yeah.
Right. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, man, we're killing it. We made, several hundreds of thousands of dollars in just 2 weeks' time and helped people and made our clients delighted. And then I'm like, can I make payroll next week?
Mm-hmm. Where's the money?
So that was this harsh lesson that I had to learn and learn quick. And then we did. And the following succeeding years, we had contingency plans in place for that. And now we've grown to the size where that's not really an issue for us. And we also kind of prepare our franchisees to play in that arena if they want to. And so we take advantage of that. meaning that we're ready to go. And so we are now. Spring forward to several years later. This past year, we deployed 4 franchisees and 5 subcontractors to New Orleans and made a couple $1 million. But what's really important is we just helped a ton of people. We helped a ton of clients, and we didn't overcharge anybody. We didn't exploit anybody. We made a reasonable profit given that. And so it was a win-win-win.
Yeah, that's fabulous. I love that you shared the story of the reality of getting paid, especially when you're dealing with government, when you're dealing with insurance, when you're dealing with these. They're slow. It's not like, I've been in the entrepreneurial space for a long time, and when I work with private individuals, I get paid I get paid immediately, and like you say, you build that into your contract. This is what you put down. This is going to guarantee that you're not working for free. But when you're dealing with at the level of a natural disaster, like a hurricane, for example, or like the tornadoes that just tore through Tennessee, right? There are a lot of hands in the pot, and it's going to be slower. So I think that as a business lesson and as a leadership lesson, sometimes we learn the hard way, right? We learn the hard way, especially when you're just starting out, because you don't know. You haven't been through that. You're thinking, oh, this is great. We're doing all this great work, and look at the satisfaction. And oh, wait a minute. Yeah. Am I going to make payroll this week?
Yeah. But I'll tell you now that we've learned that lesson, right? We apply after action review, what happened, why it happened, how we can improve. And we now just consider that those are the conditions of the battlefield.
Correct.
There's our intelligence preparation of the battlefield. And so now we understand it, and we say, okay, this is just how we have to work with the conditions within which we have to work. And now we overcome them.
Sure.
And that's I think one of the great advantages of veterans, because we're used to continual learning. We're used to kind of always assessing ourselves. And it's another huge advantage that I tell people about with vets, it's just this culture that they've run up with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, when you raise your hand and say yes to being a business owner, a business leader, there are going to be lessons that you just can't anticipate ahead of time. I mean, you can do all the preparation, and then there are going to be situations where you're thinking, okay, this is not what this is not what we thought, but you've got the core skills, you've got the core mindset in place to adapt quickly. And, it sounds to me like when you bring in new franchisees, one of the things that's baked into your training is this is how you present the contract. This is what you need to be aware of up front. And that's, to me, that's one of the benefits of a franchise opportunity if it's the right business
That's
model
right.
for you, is you get that training baked in. You're not out there, trying to figure it out all on your own. Not that that's a bad thing, but
No, that's right.
there are people that are attracted to buying into a franchise for that reason.
Yeah, when typically a franchise, costs a franchise fee up front,
Right.
and some proportion of revenue, royalty revenue into the future.
Mm-hmm.
And it's often looked at as, well, the franchise fee, is the training and everything. Well, no, really it's a combined cost. Those two together you're really kind of paying that forward. And what you're really paying for is, in its essence, the right to use intellectual property, the brand, the training, all that stuff, and the specific defined geography. That's kind of defined franchising. But what you're really paying for is my scars and my lessons learned, right? So you don't have to make them. And that is, those scars and those lessons learned are literally money. There are business mistakes that I've made. There are things that we've done that we've gotten far more efficient with, and we continue to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then the huge advantage, they say franchising, you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. And it's another, I think, huge kind of selling point for VetCor. Close your eyes and imagine a huge hurricane hitting the eastern seaboard of the United States. And you're an insurance executive, and you want someone to come help. Would you rather have a network of former military veterans, leaders, who are used to doing all those things that we just talked about and are side by side and sharing lessons learned and continuing to improve and are used to working in contingency operations or one of the, name any of the other brands in the space.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it's an unfair fight. That's why we have so much potential with this brand.
Definitely.
It's halftime here at the Play Your Position podcast, and we've got ourselves a great game. While you're up grabbing another snack and topping off your favorite beverage, make sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss another play. PYP is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever great podcasts can be found. Now, let's get back to the game.
So talk about, Paul, if you wouldn't mind, franchising with purpose. I know that's something that you really believe in. What does that mean? And for listeners, who might be curious about this opportunity or know somebody that they would want to put it in front of, talk about franchising with purpose.
Well, that's a great question. And what I tell folks is my director of franchising is another former fellow Army officer and West Point grad. He had found this chart once, and now I keep it on my phone. And I said, I only want you to consider the opportunity with VetCor, and really any opportunity you pursue, is if you're at the intersection of these four things, this really cool Venn diagram. And it's these four questions: what you love doing, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what you're good at. So there's no question you can get paid for doing restoration work. In fact, insurance companies typically pay us directly because they want to minimize the size of the claim, the scope of the claim, keep their losses down. So they want us in and out, right? There's no question the world needs, because dishwashers, ice makers, hot water heaters continually break, and global warming disasters continue to hit. They're getting more severe. So then the real question is, are you good at it, and what do you love doing?
Mm-hmm.
Well, people they ought not to buy a gym because they like working out or because they want to be a personal trainer, because the owner of the gym isn't the guy working out, isn't the guy doing the personal training, right?
Yep.
So what I say, what do you love doing? Do you love serving others in their time of need? And do you love creating opportunities for fellow veterans and representing the brand known for timely, quality, reliable service? That's franchising with a purpose. And then, what are you good at? Again, you don't have to be good at restoration, but you have to be good at learning. You have to be good at service of others. You have to be good at leading, because with the franchise system, the rest is training. And we have this world-class training program because our chief operating officer is a retired sergeant major, so none are better. So if those intersection of those four things, that's where you reside, then it may be a good fit. And then that's when we have to have a more in-depth conversation. You guys, you as a potential franchisee, someone out there has to kind of interview us, and we have to interview them, and we award franchises kind of both ways. The franchisee, we have to earn their trust and earn their, essentially, their investment into themselves, and vice versa. So what I tell people is that if you're not doing that, you're just in a job. But if you have the intersection of those, whether it's franchising with a purpose or a career with a purpose, and you listen to your podcast and you talk about that so much, that's your position. Mm-hmm. I call it the sweet spot, but that's your position. If that's your position with VetCor, with respect to VetCor, then we might be a good fit. And then we have to make sure the chemistry is right, culture is right, and everything from there.
Oh, yeah.
But it starts with that purpose.
It really does. I mean, having a purpose, that's why, it's the why. It's why Simon Sinek, did so well with that book, Start With Why. Because if you're not purpose-driven, you're just floating around. And I think one of the challenges that our educational system faces, young people coming up, is the way the system is set up currently. We're not talking about these things with our young people. And I know that for a certain percentage of folks coming out of high school, the armed services becomes a path that maybe they'll find their purpose. Some are driven to go in. They knew from a young age that they were going to be, in the Army or the Navy, whichever branch they choose. But for others, we live in a strange time there's a lot of drifting. There's a lot of, because of the uncertainty around the pandemic, but even pre-pandemic, the shift from an analog world to a digital world we're still going through that, believe it or not. This transition from, hey, we're going to always meet in person to, no, we're going to do this online. That has not been an easy transition for a lot of people. I think of my brother, for example, who, since he was 18, he's been swinging a hammer and running a general contracting company. He's both in the field and running a business. And for him, he can't work remotely. He can't build a house over Zoom.
Right.
He can't go remodel someone's kitchen through his smartphone. Technology can only do so much for us, right? And the work you do, you are boots on the ground.
Well, and it gets back to, your analogy with sports and team sports in particular and purpose, right? There is nothing like being part of something bigger than yourself.
No, there is not.
And understanding where you are part of that. I think it's one of the huge advantages that we offer with our franchise opportunity, because we're creating opportunities, sustainable, meaningful employment opportunities for veterans, and now business ownership opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to be a part of that, again, it might be a fit. But until you find that bigger purpose, you're just kind of slogging along.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. And it's true. It's harder these days when you're digital disconnected. There's a great TED Talk, by the way, I'll just insert it here, with Sebastian Younger. He wrote a book called Tribe on Homecoming and Belonging that talks about the challenges veterans face when they kind of return home and go back into a civilian society. And it's that very reason. They're disconnected because they were part of something that's so much bigger than themselves. And now they separate from that organization, that institution, their friends, and they don't find equivalents in the civilian society. Unless they join the VetCor team, of course.
Of course, right. So what's one thing you wish civilians understood about veterans? I'm sure you have a list, and feel free to, knock off half a dozen or so.
Yeah. So there's this notion, right, and veterans do really well at franchising. And there's this notion that they do so well in franchising and in the world in general, because they know they follow orders, right? They rotely follow orders. And there's this notion that that's kind of leadership is, I was a lieutenant colonel, so I had the rank on my chest. And so I said something and people had to do it. And so, the military's biggest, best leadership laboratory in the world. We are the best military that's ever run the planet because of the initiative of the small unit leader. And so while things are communicated through verbal and written orders, commander's intent 2 levels above is communicated and understood at every level. So yeah, veterans understand orders and follow them, but they really understand intent, the why, and they exercise initiative like no military that's ever been, so there's this notion that we're follow orders, very robotic-like, and it couldn't be farther from the truth. And the essence of military leadership, providing purpose, direction, and motivation, right? It's not just you go do this, don't understand the why. On the contrary, and people don't understand that unless they have served, typically.
Good. Thank you for sharing that. Because, again, conversations I've had with people over the years, there just seems to be a wall that, it's invisible, but there's a lot of misunderstandings. And at the end of the day, if someone basically signed their life away when they join the armed services, that's what they're trading. They're saying, listen, I'm here. I will lay down my life for this country. It's good to know that these misconceptions are just that, here's what, yeah.
You and I had talked about this a bit and the start of this too, right? We're at a point in time where less than 0.5% of our population actively serve in the U.S. military.
Mm-hmm.
Only about 7% of the population at large have ever served, are veterans, right? And that's the lowest it's ever been in our nation's history. And so a couple things. We ought to pound our chest, everybody, and go, yes, that's awesome. because we're the most powerful nation that's ever roamed the planet with the most powerful military, and we're doing it with the least amount of our national treasure at risk. That's awesome. That speaks volumes for how professional, how sophisticated our military is. But the challenge is that fewer and fewer people actually know personally a veteran, know what it means to serve. The military's got this great reputation. The Gallup organization does a survey for the last 30 years on the American public's faith and confidence in institutions. Military is always number one. Ironically, since it was introduced, small business is number two. So clearly the American public loves its military, reveres its military, honors it, thanks them for their service. They just don't know and understand them. And they don't have to, because we have this free society as a result of being the most powerful nation. But there's this risk, because the people who serve to protect and defend the Constitution, which gives us all those freedoms, are drifting farther and farther apart from the society who they're protecting. And that's not good. We just have to be careful about that, which is why I want to tell the story.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's great. It's great that you're telling the story. Speaking of stories, we're at the part of the show, Paul, I call touchdown, which means I'm putting you in the red zone with less than 30 seconds left on the clock. You are down by 4 points. It is now or never. Tell us a story about a time when you helped get the ball into the end zone for that game-winning touchdown.
Oh, so awesome. We were really pushing the envelope with growing our business. And so, typically businesses aren't profitable until they're in their first 3 years. We made it sooner than that, but then I just continued to put my foot down on the accelerator. So I was managing my own risk, but managing it, I think, well, but still there was an envelope there, and I was walking a fine line. And 2017, Hurricane Irma hits, and our cash position was not good, and we had this huge opportunity. And so I basically went all in, and I found ways to get us a bridge loan, because we were really less than 3 years in business. We didn't have a line of credit or anything. The cost of that capital was pretty expensive, but we really achieved a ton, and we helped just a ton of people. We processed over 2,000 claims, and that really gave us kind of the war chest that allowed us to really look at and expanding our business and getting into franchising. And where we really spiked it is that year we had competed for the Tampa Bay Chamber's Small Business of the Year startup category. And ironically, the ceremony itself, the award ceremony itself, was postponed because of Hurricane Irma. Oh. So it was supposed to be in September. It was postponed. So it ended up, I think, being like mid-October. Well, so by the time the award ceremony comes around, we were on the end of the processing all the claims and everything. So finally, after probably 45 days of working every day straight and commanding, controlling operations throughout Florida, we got this award ceremony. I got like a really cool like trolley for the whole team to ride there. Everybody was dressed up to the nines. And we won.
Oh, nice.
We won Small Business of the Year startup for Tampa Bay Chamber. And that was like a Gronk spike, man.
Yeah.
And that propelled us forward to, we got nominated. We won the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's veteran-owned, we were the runner-up veteran-owned business of the year in 2019. We won this award called Patriots in Business. And we got our logo on the NASDAQ on Veterans Day. Just so really cool things, but that's really the thing that started us at really at the end of Hurricane Irma. And that's when I knew we had something special and that we could really expand it and help a ton of veterans.
Yeah, that is a great story. Congrats on all the recognition you've received and just the feeling of, hey, we're doing something really good for the world. You're offering opportunity, and it doesn't get any better than that. Whether it's not for everybody, right? But no opportunity ever is. And in the fact that you were talking earlier about it has to be a mutually good fit. And that's something that I think some people overlook. They get these, stars in their eyes about, oh, this is going to be a fast track to cash flow or whatever. And they go into business for the wrong reasons. And I like that you have built in to working, to getting a VetCor franchise, like, listen, this is a two-way interview. It's not just you coming and paying us and we'll take your money and let you go. I mean, our brand is on the line and we want the right people in place.
That's right. It's important.
So important.
Gets to the essence of what you're talking about here. Your position. Is that position right for you? And for us, it's the intersection of those four things I mentioned. Yeah. I would offer, if anybody out there can, meet those four questions, they can answer them for themselves, that will kind of put them down the right path.
Absolutely. And speaking of, checking out what you've got going, where do you hang out online, Paul? Where can people learn more about you and VetCor?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I'm a social media hog. I'm on LinkedIn. I went from 0 to 60, literally, or like 0 to 6,000. As a retiring colonel in the Army, I had 0, profile and contacts, et cetera. And now it's like over 6,000. And I just try and provide rich content, job opportunities, those types of things, usually about veteran advocacy, entrepreneurship, business ownership stuff. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I have a personal presence there. My company has a presence. And then our website, VetCor Services, VETCOR Services, which has links to our YouTube channel. We have a bunch of rich content on there. Franchising 101 for veterans, all the different aspects of franchising, value of veterans, why you should hire veterans, tips for hiring veterans, all that kind of stuff. So any of those places, and I'm happy to help people who want to advocate for veterans and help, or help veterans themselves.
Very good. So team, links to connect with Paul, to check out all his rich content will be on his show notes page at pyppodcast.com. And as we wrap things up today, this has been a fabulous conversation. I would love for you to tell us who your team is. Who or what are you watching on Saturday and or Sunday?
Well, we just talked before the show. Unfortunately, my number one team, my Army team, lost to Navy. Congrats to Navy this past weekend. But the good news is I live in Tampa Bay, and we've got Tom Brady and Gronk and all of the great Tampa Bay Bucks, the World Series champions. We've got the Stanley Cup champions, Tampa Bay Lightning, and we have the pennant, AL pennant, the Rays, and then we have the USL runners-up in the Rowdies. So this is Tampa Bay. I've all those teams.
Yeah, I was going to say it's like Champion Bay. You are definitely in a rich sporting community. Well, it's so much fun. I mean, Tom Brady and Gronk going down there really changed the face of the Buccaneers. It's just amazing to watch those two work in sync, and that's leadership right there. Whether you love or hate the men, you have to respect their work ethic and their commitment. I mean, you want to talk about people who love what they do. Those are two to watch for sure.
Yep. So,
well, Paul, like I said, this has just been fantastic. I really appreciate your time today, and I admire what you're doing. I think your business sounds like a great opportunity for the right people, and I wish you all the best in this new year as we hopefully are coming out of the last 2 years of nonsense and get back, or, have people out in the field, doing work that they love, and making a difference.
Yes, ma'am. And Mary Lou, I just want to thank you for, one, creating a great podcast with great guests, great content. You do a great job at this. And then really offering me the opportunity to tell our story and caring so much about veterans and the topic that I'm passionate about, and helping me, give me the microphone to tell that story. So thank you so very much.
Hey team, Mary Lou here. Who's number one in football changes from year to year. Fashion trends come and go, same with musical tastes, but leadership skills, they never go out of style. In fact, these days, leadership is an essential survival skill for a world that demands more from us than ever before. To succeed these days, you need to know how to show up for yourself so that you can then do the work you love with people you like the way you want. The Play Your Position Leadership Playbook helps you do this, and it's free. Go to pyppodcast.com to download your copy today. If being more successful this year, next year, in the 21st century is on your to-do list, get your copy of the Play Your Position Leadership Playbook now. PYPpodcast.com. It's at the top of the page. You can't miss it. That's PYPpodcast.com, and start being more of the leader you are meant to be today. This podcast was produced by Daniel Romeros. Show notes for this episode can be found over at PYPpodcast.com. I'm Mary Lou Kaiser. Thanks for listening.
Here at the Play Your Position podcast, we believe that the road to self-mastery and a life well lived starts with answering the call to leadership. That's when the fun really begins. Send this episode to any friends who might need to hear the inspiration and ideas you heard today. And feel free to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform.